It began with a silence that cut through the galaxy like a knife. Every observatory, every listening station, every alien telescope that had ever tracked the blue world of humans suddenly found nothing. The lights that once glimmered from Earth's orbit went dark. Even the chatter of satellites and the faint hum of transmissions ceased in an instant. It was as if a whole star system had been swallowed by a shadow. Across the galactic network, alarms screamed, but no data came through. The Council's analysts argued, panicked, and reset their systems, convinced it was a network malfunction. Yet one by one, their devices confirmed the same truth. Earth's sector had gone silent. The silence wasn't the kind that comes from emptiness. It was heavy, deliberate, filled with intent. Somewhere deep in the void, humanity had gone dark, and the galaxy had no idea why. In the shining spires of the Galactic Council's capital, the highest-ranking officials gathered in a hall of glass and gold. Around them flickered holograms of the Milky Way, bright lines connecting trade routes, colonies, and communication nodes. But at the center, where Sol System should have glowed, there was only a black circle. The Chancellor of the Council, a towering insectoid with gleaming emerald plates, tapped a claw nervously against the marble floor. "This cannot be natural," he hissed. "No civilization simply disappears." The avian diplomat beside him, feathers trembling, spoke softly. "Unless they wanted to." His words silenced the room. The Council had seen Earth act before, calm, polite, almost humble in its dealings. But there was something unsettling about that sudden quiet. Every race that had ever studied humanity knew that when they stopped talking, it meant they were preparing. For centuries, humans had been considered newcomers, a young and reckless species allowed entry into the galactic order out of pity. They were watched, mocked, and studied like curiosities. They shared technology too freely, argued too boldly, and laughed in the face of creatures that ruled for millennia. The galaxy had called them impulsive, short-lived, emotional. Yet, in that impulsive nature, there was something dangerous, something ancient and patient. And now, as the stars near their home blinked out of the galactic map, every empire began to feel it. Fear. No one knew what Earth was doing behind that wall of silence. But everyone remembered how quickly they had learned, how fast they had built fleets, how fiercely they had defended themselves during the border skirmishes a generation ago. The last time someone provoked them, entire fleets vanished into solar storms that no probe could explain. In the deep laboratories of the Canary Empire, scientists ran simulation after simulation. "It must be a communications collapse," said one. "No species can black out an entire system without affecting external signals." But then a young technician gasped as the readings stabilized. "It's not a collapse," she whispered. "It's a controlled barrier, like a cocoon." The silence wasn't chaos, it was precision. Somewhere inside, Earth had activated something that blanketed its world and every surrounding station, cutting them off from the galaxy completely. The Council dispatched reconnaissance ships, but each one disappeared within minutes of crossing the invisible line. No debris, no transmissions, just gone. That's when the whispers began spreading through the colonies. The humans are hiding something. They're building a weapon. They're preparing for war. Far across the stars, on a distant mining colony orbiting the red dwarf Hasker 7, an old alien miner looked up at the night sky and muttered, "I told them not to provoke the Deathworlders." His words carried across the cantina, and silence fell over the other workers. Everyone had heard stories about how humans came from a planet where nature tried to kill them every day, where storms could tear metal apart and beasts hunted in packs. A world that forged not just bodies, but wills. It wasn't their weapons that frightened the galaxy. It was their resolve. Now that resolve had gone silent, hidden behind a shroud of technology no one else understood. For the first time, even the most powerful species felt small. The Council tried diplomacy, sending automated messages and probes with peace requests. None returned. A week later, a new signal burst through the void. A single tone that lasted exactly 14 minutes. It wasn't music, it wasn't words. But every sensor in the galaxy recorded it, and every listener swore they felt it deep in their bones. After the tone ended, all systems monitoring Earth fried instantly, their circuits burned out as if by design. "It's a message," said the council linguists. "A countdown or a warning." Panic swept the halls. Fleets scrambled to defensive positions. Empires that had been enemies for centuries suddenly began forming uneasy alliances. Every admiral, every commander, every strategist whispered the same thought: Earth is doing something we can't see. Meanwhile, far beyond the reach of alien sensors, inside the barrier's shadow, the truth unfolded. Earth hadn't gone dark. It had gone silent to prepare. The Terran Defense Command had gathered the entire planetary network into what they called Operation Ecliptic Shield, a massive defense web linked by quantum relays, powered by artificial suns hidden behind Mars and Jupiter. It was the first step of a plan humanity had designed decades ago, known only by one phrase: "In silence we rise." The blackout field was the test. And now that it worked, humanity no longer needed to ask for permission to exist among the stars. They would define their own order. The alien empires watched helplessly as the days passed. Trade routes collapsed, traffic near human space froze. Even pirates avoided the dark zone. Then, without warning, a faint light returned. One single human satellite came back online, broadcasting an image of Earth's blue oceans. But it wasn't a signal of peace. Along with the image came a short message: "Do not approach. Observation in progress." The message repeated in every known language, in perfect translation. The council assembled immediately, demanding an explanation, but none came. The diplomats argued whether to attack or wait. Yet deep down, they all knew the truth. No one wanted to be the one to find out what humanity was observing. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the stars shifted again. This time, the blackout spread outward. Every system near Earth's border flickered and vanished from the galactic map. It was expanding, swallowing entire sectors in waves of dark silence. The council screamed in confusion, ordering every fleet to retreat, but it was too late. The humans had moved beyond defense. They were now in control of the void. For 14 minutes, the entire sector went dark. No light, no sound, no signal. When the blackout lifted, what they saw on the holomaps froze every species in terror. The alien fleets stationed near Earth were gone. Not destroyed, gone, as if they'd never existed. Back in the council chamber, the chancellor trembled as he whispered, "The stars," they went silent. Across the galaxy, broadcast networks replayed the footage again and again, the instant when light itself seemed to bow to Earth's will. Empires that had mocked humanity now sent envoys offering tribute, while others simply locked down their borders, terrified. No one knew how Earth had done it, or what kind of power could erase fleets without a trace. Some claimed it was a weapon, others said it was a message. But those who truly understood humanity knew better. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't conquest. It was a statement, a reminder that when pushed to the edge, humanity would not scream. They would simply act. And somewhere, beyond the stars that once sparkled in every sky, Earth waited quietly. Its fleets floated in the shadows, their engines cold, their guns silent, their purpose unknown. The galaxy had always believed power came from noise, from armies, declarations, and shows of strength. But now it learned the most terrifying power was silence. For in that silence lived patience, precision, and something far greater than fear, the will of humanity. The stars had gone silent, but only because Earth had finally spoken in the days that followed the galactic blackout. The council's panic turned into pure chaos, their great chamber echoing with the sounds of alien voices arguing, trembling, and demanding answers that no one could give. And in that chaos, the truth became harder to ignore. Humanity had done something no other species in recorded history had ever managed. They had vanished from the grid of the known universe without leaving a trace, and the implications shook the very foundation of galactic power. Empires that had mocked humans as primitive now found themselves holding emergency meetings, trying to explain to their people why the so-called infant race had just silenced half the galactic network. In the towering halls of the Vorkan Dominion, Admiral Threx paced before a holomap, his mandibles clicking nervously as his officers updated him on the situation. Every probe we've sent disappears the moment it enters. Terran space. One of them reported. The last transmission we received was only 3 words. Signal disruption confirmed. Threx slammed his claw against the console. Signal disruption, my scales? He hissed. That's no disruption. That's control. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Panic hidden behind military discipline. But even the most disciplined of empires could not ignore the truth. Humanity had isolated itself, and in doing so, it had frightened the galaxy more than any open act of war ever could. In the high orbit above the capital planet of the Zalari Empire, a council of their most advanced minds gathered around an enormous glowing sphere. A simulation of the blackout zone, flickering with static and invisible pulses of energy. We've studied the edge of the anomaly, said Dr. Sinir, a being of translucent flesh and exposed veins of light. It isn't random, it's coded. The frequency changes every few hours as if it's alive. The Emperor's holographic projection flickered before them, his voice a cold hum. You're telling me a planet of flesh and dust built a living defense network? Sinir hesitated, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. Not living, sire, evolving. That single word made the room colder, for every empire knew what evolution meant when it came to humans. They adapted, they learned, they survived, and the idea that their technology now shared that same trait filled even the bravest species with unease. Reports began spreading of ghost signals, faint pings that seemed to mimic alien distress calls, drawing ships closer before vanishing entirely. Rescue vessels sent to recover them never returned. It was as though Earth had become a gravitational void, pulling curiosity, arrogance, and fear into its center, leaving nothing behind. Meanwhile, deep within the Terran Command Center hidden beneath Antarctica's ice, Earth's greatest minds worked in perfect synchronization. There was no shouting, no panic, only quiet determination. Holographic screens displayed data streams, fleet readiness charts, and encrypted communications between the colonies of Mars, Titan, and Europa. Phase 2 complete, reported Commander Alara Holt, her voice calm and firm. Quantum relays synchronized, solar shield stable, fleet positioned at shadow perimeters. The Supreme Commander, Admiral Jonas Creed, nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the rotating image of the galaxy above the table. They'll come looking, he said, his tone even. Let them look, and when they see nothing, they'll realize what that means. Around him, officers from every branch stood in silent readiness, united not by fear but by a promise, the promise that no one would ever again dictate Earth's fate. Every member of the command had read the reports, the insults, the restrictions, the treaties that kept humanity under the Council's thumb, and now all of that was over. Operation Ecliptic Shield wasn't just about defense. It was about reclaiming silence, silence from interference, silence from mockery, silence from the galaxy's condescension. In the outer systems, the alien fleets began assembling near the borders of Terran space. Thousands of ships from different empires gathered in uneasy alliance, their banners glowing against the void. Yet even together, they felt small. Their admirals exchanged encrypted messages filled with doubt. We cannot allow this blackout to continue. One message read, if Earth has truly developed a field capable of shutting down communications, they could cripple galactic trade. But another replied, simply, approach at your own risk. Still, the Council demanded an investigation, and so the first recon armada was launched. A fleet of 6,000 vessels equipped with the most advanced sensors in existence. As they neared the edge of the dark zone, their instruments began to fail one by one. Light bent strangely around them, stars appeared to flicker out, and soon, only the central flagship systems remained. Its commander, a reptilian veteran named Karan Talk, stood at the viewport, his scaled hands trembling slightly. This doesn't feel like interference, he muttered. It feels like we're being watched. Before his crew could respond, their navigation grid vanished, replaced by a single human symbol, a circle of white with a line through it, the universal Terran signal for restricted zone. Then the sound came, a low hum that grew louder and louder until it vibrated through their hulls. Not an attack, not static, just a deep, resonating tone that made every living being aboard feel their heartbeat slow. Retreat! Karan shouted, but it was too late. One by one, the ships disappeared from galactic radar. their last transmission a whisper. "They're here." Back in the council chamber, silence reigned. The loss of the recon armada sent shockwaves through every empire. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for surrender. The Chancellor tried to maintain order, but fear had already taken root. "We have provoked something we cannot understand," said the elder of the Ulnar Collective, his crystalline body pulsing dimly. "When a death world goes silent, it is not because it sleeps, it's because it hunts." His words echoed across the chamber, and no one dared to disagree. Even the empires that had once laughed at human audacity began pulling their fleets back from Terran borders. Merchants refused to enter nearby systems, and communication satellites were rerouted to avoid the dark zone. The galaxy had gone from mockery to terror in less than a cycle. The irony was cruel. Humanity had done nothing but turn off the lights, and that alone had thrown the galaxy into chaos. Inside the Terran headquarters, Admiral Creed watched the encrypted transmissions flooding through intercepted alien networks, fear spreading like wildfire across the stars. "They're panicking," said Commander Holt, almost smiling. Creed's expression didn't change. "Good. Let them. It'll buy us time." She hesitated. "Sir, time for what?" He looked up at the glowing map of the galaxy, where Earth now appeared as a single bright pulse at the center of spreading darkness. "Time to prepare for the day when silence isn't enough," he said softly, his eyes reflecting the void beyond. Humanity had no intention of starting a war. But if the galaxy insisted on one, Earth would end it before it began. For now, though, the stars would remain quiet, their light hidden behind a shroud of human design, and every corner of the universe would whisper the same question in fear. What had humanity become in the dark? The silence had lasted for weeks, but when the first light returned, it was not from a star, it was from Earth. A faint pulse rippled through the dark zone, so subtle that most sensors missed it, but the few that caught it realized what it was. A beacon, deliberate, rhythmic, controlled, and then, one by one, alien long-range scanners began to detect faint signals inside the blackout, strange gravitational distortions, small flashes of movement that didn't match any known ship pattern. At first they thought it was static, but then the patterns repeated, almost like breathing. Across the galaxy, the chatter began again. "They're testing something," one alien admiral whispered. "The humans are alive in there." The council's chambers filled once more with anxious energy, maps glowing with new signals from the Sol sector, but no one could make sense of them. Every ship sent to investigate simply vanished, leaving behind frozen telemetry that stopped mid-data stream, as if time itself had blinked. In the capital of the Velan Dominion, a race known for their arrogance and endless wars, their military council gathered in their war room, the air thick with tension. Grand Marshal Tuvin struck the table with his gauntlet. "They mock us with this silence?" he growled. "Humans are a lesser race, a death world breed. We cannot allow them to destabilize the galaxy." Around him, his officers said nothing. They all remembered what happened the last time someone underestimated humans, the Battle of Titan Rift, where 3 Dominion fleets were wiped out by a handful of Terran cruisers that shouldn't have even existed at that time. Ships that moved as if they knew where the enemy would strike before it happened. Tuvin snarled, "Launch the probes. I want to know what they're hiding." Within hours, hundreds of stealth drones were dispatched toward Sol, each cloaked in electromagnetic camouflage, and for a moment it seemed like the Dominion might finally pierce the veil. But then one by one the signals faded, replaced by a static pulse that spelled out 3 words in Terran binary. "We see you." The room went silent. Tuvin's fists clenched, but deep down he felt something ancient: fear. Across the galaxy, more fleets attempted to probe the dark, but none returned. The Council declared an emergency summit. The Great Hall filled with hundreds of alien species, scaled, feathered, crystalline, luminous, and every one of them turned their eyes toward the human seat at the round table, empty, yet spotless, as if someone had just left. The Chancellor spoke, his voice trembling slightly. "We must demand transparency," he said. "If humanity is building weapons, we must unite before they strike." But the elder of the Ulnar Collective, a being made of shimmering crystal, spoke quietly. "Transparency from a world that no longer needs to speak?" His question struck deeper than any accusation, for the Council realized that all their strength, all their fleets, all their laws, meant nothing if humanity chose to ignore them. The silence of one planet had made 1,000 empires tremble. Meanwhile, within the blackout field, the human fleet moved in perfect coordination. Thousands of ships drifted in the shadow of planets and moons, invisible to the universe. Inside the flagship TDS Resolution, Admiral Jonas Creed stood before the observation glass, watching the artificial sun pulse through the dark haze of the ecliptic shield. His officers waited for orders, but Creed remained silent, his expression calm and unreadable. "Status of the Ghost Grid?" he finally asked. Commander Holt replied, "Complete, sir. All units synchronized and cloaked, ready for Operation Nightfall." Creed nodded slowly. "And the alien probes?" "Neutralized, sir. They never saw us." Creed's eyes narrowed, his voice soft. "Good. Let them think we're gone. Fear will keep them still longer than war ever could." He turned back toward the stars, and for a long time no one spoke. The hum of the ship was the only sound, a deep, steady rhythm like a heartbeat in the dark. But outside the human sphere, tension built like a storm. Reports spread of alien colonies losing power without warning, entire outposts flickering in and out of existence for seconds before returning. Terrified witnesses spoke of seeing human ships moving through their skies like ghosts. No heat, no light, only the outline of something massive blotting out the stars. "It's impossible," cried the Council's technicians. "They can't be there." But the survivors swore they saw the Terran insignia before their systems rebooted. Soon the galaxy had a new name for humanity's invisible fleet, the Silent Armada. It became a curse whispered in shadowed halls, a legend told by smugglers and soldiers alike. "Don't stare too long into Terran space," they said, "or Terran space will stare back." As the weeks passed, the Council's fear turned into desperation. They sent emissaries, peace envoys, even priests of the ancient orders to beg for communication. Each one crossed into the dark zone, and each one failed to return. Then, without warning, the blackout field pulsed again, and for the first time in months, a signal burst through. It was visual, simple, clean, deliberate. On every galactic screen appeared the image of Earth, half lit by dawn, half shadowed by night, surrounded by a halo of ships stretching into infinity. And then a voice, human, calm, male, emotionless, spoke 3 words that silenced 1,000 worlds. "The observation ends." The signal cut out, and immediately the sensors showed movement, massive, synchronized movement. Fleets, hundreds of Terran vessels accelerating outward, leaving the Sol system in perfect formation. Panic swept through the council chambers. Some called it an invasion, others called it exploration, but no one knew which was worse. Every government scrambled to prepare defenses, every admiral issued alerts, and every broadcast repeated the same phrase: "Earth is moving." The galaxy watched in disbelief as Terran fleets emerged beyond the blackout. Their ships sleek, dark, and silent, powered by unknown drives that bent light around them. The Council attempted to hail them, no response. One brave captain from the Velan Dominion fired a warning shot. The humans didn't return fire. They didn't need to. The projectile vanished before reaching its target, as if swallowed by the void. Seconds later, the Dominion ship's engines went cold. The systems shut down. Its crew floated helplessly while a human vessel drifted past, silent, unarmed, unstoppable. On the observation decks of the Council's capital, the stars near Earth flickered again. One by one, systems went dark. Entire constellations vanished from the galactic map. The blackout was spreading once more. Someone whispered, "What are they doing?" Another voice answered, "They're not attacking. They're erasing the sky." And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy realized it was no longer in control. The humans had no need for declarations, no hunger for conquest. They were simply setting the boundaries of their silence, and the universe could only watch as the stars fell quiet again, one by one, until the night itself belonged to Earth. The council chamber was no longer a place of reason. It had become a theater of fear, every delegate shouting over the other, their voices a chorus of panic that echoed through the grand marble hall, hollow screens flickering with static as more systems reported loss of contact with their border colonies. Fleets sent to monitor Terran space were now ghost signals, appearing for a moment and then dissolving into the void. No debris, no distress calls, nothing but silence. And that silence pressed down like a living thing, suffocating every corner of the galaxy. The Chancellor's voice cracked as he tried to restore order. "This cannot be an act of war," he insisted. "Earth would never." But the chamber lights dimmed, and all communication feeds cut to black. Every delegate froze as the massive holographic projection above the council table flickered to life, displaying a single image, a Terran insignia, silver against a field of stars. Then a voice, deep, calm, and unmistakably human, filled the hall. "We warned you once, do not trespass again." The tone wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was calm. But that calmness carried something far worse than fury. It carried certainty. The projection vanished, leaving behind only the reflection of terrified faces. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. The sound of claws tapping, wings twitching, and mechanical joints creaking filled the room like insects whispering in the dark. The Council of 1,000 Worlds, the oldest and most powerful institution in the galaxy, had just been addressed not as equals, but as children being scolded. One of the younger species representatives, a lizard-like alien barely grown, hissed, "We cannot allow them to intimidate us." His words were brave, but his voice trembled. From the far end of the chamber, the Ulnar Elder, his crystalline skin dimly glowing, responded in a slow, weary tone. "Young one, if they wish to intimidate us, there would be no stars left to see." Those words silenced the chamber again, and outside, the first human fleets were beginning to move. In the deep void near the border world of Zalera, 3 Dominion cruisers patrolled the silence, their captains nervous, their scans picking up faint ghost signatures. "It's just residual radiation," one said, but before the words could leave his mouth, the stars around them seemed to stretch and warp, and then they were there, Terran warships, black as obsidian, their hulls absorbing every ounce of light, their forms massive and angular, no visible weapons, no glowing engines, just shadows moving through shadows. "Identify yourselves," the Dominion commander shouted into the void. There was no answer, only a faint vibration through the hull, like a heartbeat. Then a voice came through, quiet and distorted. "You have entered restricted Terran space." The commander tried to reply, but his voice caught in his throat. The sound around him dimmed as if the air itself was being drained of life. Before his sensors could react, the ships vanished and all systems went dark. The crew drifted in total silence, staring into the black where the stars had been. And then, one by one, they vanished from the galaxy's grid, their ships erased as if they never existed. When news reached the Council, it broke the fragile unity that remained. Every empire began to blame the others. Some accused the humans of testing a weapon, others claimed it was divine punishment, and a few whispered that the humans had merged with something far beyond technology. But amidst the chaos, a single transmission leaked from a captured data relay. It was an intercepted human communication, translated by the Council's linguists. The message was short, just 6 words: Phase 2, enforce the silence perimeter. That phrase sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The humans weren't reacting, they were executing a plan, a structured, multi-phase operation. Someone had once called them impulsive, emotional, unpredictable. Now the galaxy saw the truth. They were disciplined, methodical, and terrifyingly precise. In orbit above Mars, Admiral Jonas Creed stood before his officers, the glow of holographic maps reflecting off his eyes. "They're starting to pull back," Commander Holt said, reviewing intercepted transmissions. "The Council is scared." Creed didn't look up. "Good, fear is efficient," he replied, his tone steady. "But it's not enough. They'll gather again. They always do." He walked toward the viewport, watching the curve of Mars bathed in the red glow of the artificial sun. "Begin deployment of Ghost Fleet Command," he ordered. "Understood," Holt replied, her fingers flying across the console. Moments later, the orbital docks came alive. Hundreds of massive ships powered up silently, their engines cold, their hulls coated with adaptive light-bending armor. The Ghost Fleet, humanity's most secret weapon, wasn't built to fight wars. It was built to end them before they began. Back on the Council's capital world, riots erupted across the streets. Civilians demanded to know why their fleets were disappearing, why the stars themselves seemed to fade one by one. Religious sects declared the silence divine judgment, while scientists debated theories of dark energy manipulation and temporal distortion. None of them were correct. Humanity wasn't using magic or gods. They were using science so advanced it felt like both. Their control over quantum gravity fields had evolved beyond the Council's comprehension. They could bend light, silence energy, erase signals, and vanish entire fleets in the blink of an eye. What terrified the galaxy most wasn't their power, it was their restraint. They hadn't fired a single shot since the first blackout, yet their presence alone had brought the universe to its knees. The Chancellor called for one last emergency meeting, hoping to open communication. As he addressed the assembly, his words trembled. "We cannot live in fear of them, we must." But his sentence was cut short as the chamber lights went out once more. The delegates gasped, but instead of the human insignia, a live transmission appeared. It was Earth. Real, vivid, beautiful. Oceans glittered, clouds drifted, city lights sparkled like stars. Then the camera panned outward, showing the full sphere of the planet surrounded by thousands of dark ships, orbiting in perfect silence. The human voice returned, calm and final. "We will no longer be part of your council. The age of silence begins." The feed ended, and before anyone could respond, all data channels in the galaxy reset, erasing centuries of shared archives, laws, and treaties. Humanity had just erased itself from galactic history. The stars beyond Sol dimmed once again, and across the galaxy, a realization spread like wildfire. Earth hadn't gone dark to hide. It had gone dark to ascend. Their silence wasn't the sound of retreat. It was the sound of dominance, of a civilization that no longer needed to prove anything. The galaxy had mocked them, underestimated them, enslaved their trade, and stolen their resources. Now the tables had turned, and humanity had become the ghost in the machine, the shadow behind every sensor, the quiet presence that no one could track or understand. From this day forward, the stars that once watched Earth would remain silent, because every empire now knew that somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, humanity was watching back. Panic spread like wildfire across the galaxy, entire civilizations trembling under the weight of the unknown, the fear of silence, and the ghostly presence of Earth that no one could see yet everyone could feel, on thousands of worlds, from the burning sands of the Velan deserts to the crystal skies of the Ulnar. Cities, the same whisper moved through the streets. The humans have returned, yet the truth was far more terrifying. They had never left, they had simply stopped speaking, and the galaxy had built its illusions of power in that silence. Now those illusions were collapsing, trade lanes flickered with static, fleets refused to travel through Terran sectors, communication networks failed without reason, as if an invisible force was rewriting the laws of physics, and everywhere the same phenomenon occurred. The stars near Earth's region began to vanish again, one by one, swallowed by a growing sphere of darkness that seemed to expand with purpose. In the Council archives, the best minds worked endlessly to find a pattern, but every simulation ended with the same phrase written in human code: observation complete. The meaning was debated endlessly, yet everyone understood deep down. It was over, humanity had seen enough. In the underground vaults of the Zalari Dominion, their scientists huddled around a projection of the dark zone, hundreds of data streams dancing like threads of light across the void. "They're mapping us?" whispered one, his four hands shaking as he watched the streams converge. "This is reconnaissance, not retaliation." The elder scientist beside him, older and scarred from decades of war, nodded grimly. "They're learning," he said, "and when they finish learning, they'll act." But before the conversation could continue, every light in the chamber dimmed, and the holographic map flickered, replaced by a human face, pale, calm, emotionless. It was a transmission. Direct, personal, deliberate. The voice that followed was low and steady. "Cease surveillance," it said. "The next observation will not be tolerated." Then the feed cut off, leaving only the echo of breathing in the room. The Dominion's War Council gathered moments later, but even their most aggressive generals hesitated to propose retaliation. They had seen what happened to fleets that entered human space. No wreckage, no remains, just absence, as if space itself had erased them. Back on Earth, inside the fortified Terran command complex buried beneath the Andes Mountains, Admiral Jonas Creed stood before a vast holographic sphere displaying the entire Milky Way, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Commander Holt monitored the feeds from alien transmissions flooding in through hidden intercepts. "They're panicking, sir," she said. "Half the empires have gone into isolation, the other half are calling for surrender." Creed didn't look up, his voice steady, almost detached. "They should," he said. "The universe is too loud. It's time someone taught it how to listen." Holt hesitated, watching him closely. "Sir, are we really going to proceed with Phase 3? Creed turned to her, his eyes calm but burning with something deeper. "Commander, we've tried peace, we've tried diplomacy, we've begged for respect, and they laughed. They called us savage, primitive, emotional, but now," he paused, his gaze drifting toward the holographic stars. "Now they'll see that silence can be the loudest answer of all." He raised his hand and gave the command. "Initiate Phase 3. Let the stars go quiet." Within hours, the Terran ghost fleets moved, gliding through the void without sound or trace. Thousands of ships powered by dark energy drives that left no emissions. No heat, no light, only distortions that rippled across gravity fields like whispers. Alien observers watching from the edges of their systems began to vanish from their posts as their sensors went blank. Whole sectors went dark, not destroyed, but muted, their suns still burning yet unseen, their worlds still spinning yet cut off. From galactic communication, the humans were not conquering. They were silencing, teaching the galaxy the cost of arrogance. And on every world that once mocked Earth, the same message appeared in their skies, not through sound, but through the stars themselves, forming words that glowed faintly in binary light. "We do not seek war, but we remember." It lasted only seconds before the constellations returned to normal, but it was enough to send fear rippling through every living being that looked up that night. The Council's last effort to respond came from their hidden base in the core nebula, where the remnants of their fleets gathered in a desperate alliance, thousands of ships representing dozens of species, their commanders pale with dread. "We have to strike before they expand further," barked Admiral Threx of the Vorkan. "If we wait any longer, there will be no galaxy left." The Chancellor nodded weakly. "Prepare the counteroffensive," he said. But even as the orders were given, the lights of their ships began to flicker, one by one, systems going dark, gravity stabilizers failing, and before anyone could react, space itself folded open in front of them, revealing a single human vessel vast beyond comprehension, a moving fortress of silence. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, absorbing every sensor pulse, every scan, and when it spoke, its voice filled the minds of every commander present. "You were warned," it said. The silence was mercy. Then, in a blinding flash of white light, the fleets were gone, not destroyed by weapons, but erased from existence. Their data, coordinates, and even memory wiped from galactic records. Back in the council chamber, the news arrived in fragments. Distorted signals, partial recordings, faint whispers from dying relays. All of them repeating the same phrase: "The silence has begun." Across the galaxy, worlds dimmed, their skies empty, their networks cut, and for the first time in recorded history, there was peace. Not the peace of treaties or diplomacy, but the peace of fear, the kind that made even the most powerful empires bow their heads and listen. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. It had quieted it. Every empire that once mocked them now held emergency councils in the dark, too afraid to even speak the name Earth, for fear the silence might notice. Inside Terran Command, Admiral Creed stood at the observation deck of the orbital fortress Resolute Dawn, watching Earth rise against the stars. Behind him, Commander Holt spoke softly. "The Council's communications are completely gone, sir. It's over." Creed nodded slowly, his voice low. "No, Commander, it's only just begun." She looked at him, puzzled. "Sir?" He turned to face her, the faint glow of Earth's oceans reflected in his eyes. "The galaxy will rebuild, and when it does, they'll tell stories about this day," he said. "Stories of the time humanity vanished the stars, stories of the day silence ruled the sky. He looked back out the viewport, his voice almost a whisper now. And maybe, for the first time in history, they'll finally understand. Humans never needed to shout to be heard. And as the Terran fleet drifted quietly through the black, the stars above seemed to hold their breath, afraid to shine too brightly, as if even the heavens feared to disturb the silence humanity had created. The galaxy had never known quiet like this before. Not in all its billions of years, not since the first sparks of civilization lit the void. For now the silence was total, heavy, living, stretching from one end of the Milky Way to the other like a shroud. Worlds that once buzzed with trade, laughter, and argument now sat in eerie stillness, their skies dim, their stars faint, and their people whispering about the one name no one dared to say aloud. Earth, communication channels that once carried trillions of voices were blank. Every broadcast station across the empires now echoed with nothing but static, and every attempt to send a signal toward the Sol system ended in the same result: immediate termination, no response, no interference, simply gone, erased as though swallowed by something vast and unseen. In that void of sound, power shifted, fear replaced ambition, and the mighty Galactic Council that had once ruled unchallenged now stood crippled, a shadow of its former pride, its halls abandoned, its delegates missing, its authority erased by a single act of human will. The silence was not just the absence of sound. It was control, perfect and absolute. In the depths of what was once the Council's central archive station, a lone technician named Vera sat before her console, her eyes bloodshot, her tendrils trembling as she reviewed the few fragments of intercepted human transmissions that had survived the blackout. Most were corrupted beyond recovery, but one message kept repeating itself through the static, a single phrase encoded in hundreds of languages. Observation complete. Correction commencing. The words chilled her to the core. The term correction could only mean one thing: humanity was rewriting the order of things, reshaping the galaxy not through war but through design. And somewhere deep inside her, she understood what that meant. The Council's version of civilization was over. The age of Terran silence had begun. She looked up at the shattered skylight above her, at the dim stars that flickered uncertainly in the void, and she whispered a prayer to whatever gods were still listening, though even her prayer felt small against that endless, watching stillness. Meanwhile, far beyond the reach of alien eyes, the Terran fleets moved like ghosts through the black, their ships vast and silent, their engines pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of the universe. Inside the command bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Jonas Creed watched the holographic projection of the galaxy before him. A map filled with fading lights marking the once proud centers of alien power, now reduced to whispers of existence. Commander Holt approached quietly, her boots barely making a sound against the metal floor. "Phase 4 completed, sir," she said, her voice steady but soft. All Council fleets neutralized, communication sectors silenced, and the last resistance enclaves on the outer rim have gone dark. Creed nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the map. "And the colonies?" "Safe, sir," she replied. The shield grid around Sol holds perfectly, no incursions detected, Earth remains secure. For a long time, Creed said nothing, the silence between them almost reverent. Then he spoke in a tone that was calm but heavy with meaning. "For centuries, they thought our words were weakness. They mistook our patience for submission. They never understood that silence was our sharpest weapon." Holt hesitated. "And now, sir?" Creed turned toward her, his eyes cold and resolute. "Now they will live in the quiet they gave us." Across the galaxy, the aftermath was absolute. Entire empires that once boasted fleets of 1,000,000 ships now operated on whispers and superstition. In the far reaches of the Andril cluster, farmers worked their soil under faint skies, their children asking why the stars no longer sparkled the way they used to, and their elders answered in hushed tones: "Because the humans took the light." On the world of Atraxis, the great libraries burned their ancient records, fearful that even the mention of Earth's name might draw its attention again. And on the metallic moons of the Canary, a cult arose, followers who called themselves the Listeners, who sat in silence for hours, believing that through quiet meditation, they might hear the humans' will and earn forgiveness. The galaxy had turned religion into fear, science into myth, all because of a species that refused to speak. Inside the Terran Council chambers beneath the Andes, The new order convened. The leaders of Earth and its colonies gathered around the massive obsidian table that reflected the faint blue glow of the holographic displays above. The blackout field across the galactic plane remained stable. Reported Director Arlen Shaw of the Quantum Division, energy output nominal, synchronization at 99.9% efficiency. Another officer added, "We've received data from the outer stations. The alien empires are fragmenting. The council worlds are collapsing economically. Most of them have turned inward, isolating themselves completely." There was a pause before Admiral Creed spoke, his voice quiet yet commanding. "Good, let them," he said. "They wanted isolation. They wanted humanity kept separate. Now they have it. The galaxy will learn to exist without controlling what it doesn't understand." His words carried a weight of centuries, the voice of a species that had endured ridicule, slavery, and endless condescension, and finally, quietly, had decided enough was enough. Back in the void, near the edge of the Orion Arm, a single alien outpost detected something it hadn't seen in years. A faint light on the horizon, slow and steady, like a sunrise in space. The technicians scrambled to their stations, their instruments lighting up with readings they hadn't seen since before the silence. "It's a ship?" someone shouted. "Human signature." Panic spread through the station, but instead of destruction, the transmission that followed was simple, clear, and devastatingly calm. "To the surviving members of the Council," the voice said, "Earth acknowledges your surrender. You will rebuild in peace. You will not trespass beyond your borders, and you will remember this silence." Then the light faded, the transmission cut, and the stars dimmed once more, leaving only the memory of that voice, echoing through the cold eternity of space. In the days that followed, a new phrase entered galactic culture, the Silence Doctrine. A law unwritten yet obeyed by all, a reminder that to speak too loudly, to threaten too boldly, was to invite the attention of Earth, and none wished to risk that again. Children across distant worlds grew up with stories of the day the stars went dark. Parents warned them, "Be still when the night is quiet, for that is when the humans are listening." And though centuries would pass, that legend endured. Humanity became not conquerors, not tyrants, but the shadow that kept the peace. The silent watchers beyond the dark, unseen but omnipresent, patient but eternal. And as Admiral Creed once said beneath the cold glow of soul, our silence was never surrender. It was the universe's reminder that sometimes, the quietest voice commands the loudest obedience. Centuries passed, and the galaxy learned to live beneath the shadow of silence. Empires that had once stretched across the stars now whispered among themselves, their grand halls dim and empty, their fleets anchored in orbit but never daring to launch beyond their own borders. The silence had become their law, their shield, and their fear. Children were born who had never seen the Milky Way fully lit, for many of the stars remained veiled by the Terran blackout fields that still rippled faintly. Across the galactic rim, it was said that the humans kept them that way not out of cruelty but as a reminder. A boundary drawn in shadow that no one dared to cross. In time, a fragile kind of peace took root, not born of friendship or alliance, but of respect, the kind that comes from knowing the cost of arrogance. Still, the galaxy could not forget, because in every mind, in every memory passed down through the generations, the story remained. The night the stars went silent, and Earth watched. From the dark, in the outer rim, on the fractured world of Kalis 9, a young alien scholar named Terran studied the last preserved archives of the old Galactic Council, dusty holograms flickering with images of the humans before the silence. Their faces expressive, their voices vibrant, their eyes burning with something alien species never understood: hope, determination, fire. Why did they stop speaking? Terran asked his mentor, an ancient Olner whose crystalline form shimmered weakly in the candlelight. The elder looked down at him and replied, "Because the galaxy stopped listening." And for a moment, Terran thought he heard something outside, a faint hum, low and distant, like the heartbeat of the void itself. The silence was not punishment, the elder continued softly. It was mercy. The humans gave us what we asked for, a galaxy without them. Those words lingered in Terran's thoughts for years, for in his heart he wondered if perhaps the silence had saved them all, preventing another war that could have burned the stars themselves to ash. But not everyone believed the humans had vanished completely. There were stories, always stories, of strange lights seen near the dark zones, of colossal ships gliding between systems faster than light, leaving trails of distortion that faded before sensors could capture them. Miners in asteroid belts spoke of shadows moving against the void, so massive they blocked entire constellations for minutes at a time, and on rare nights, deep space observatories caught faint transmissions hidden inside. Cosmic radiation, not words, not numbers, but rhythm, steady, deliberate, human, heartbeat signals. They called them, though no one could prove it. Still, those who listened too closely always said the same thing. They are still out there, and they are still watching, and so, while the galaxy rebuilt itself in silence, Earth's presence remained a ghost, unseen but undeniable, the unspoken truth behind every peace treaty, every alliance, every law of caution that governed the stars. Far beyond the edges of the known sectors, deep within the black expanse humans once called the ecliptic shadow, the Terran fleet still existed, vast and eternal, their ships now cities, their people descendants of the generation that brought the galaxy to silence, and at the center of it all, Earth glowed like a blue jewel, its oceans calm, its cities rebuilt, its people living without fear. Admiral Jonas Creed was long gone, but his legacy had become doctrine, his words etched into the very foundation of human philosophy. In silence, we endure. In silence, we learn. In silence, we rise. The Terran command had become something greater than a military. It was now the governing force of balance across the galaxy. Its fleets patrolling the void not to conquer but to maintain the equilibrium that the old council had shattered, to ensure that no species ever again wielded arrogance against another. Humanity had become what it was always destined to be, the silent guardians of a galaxy that once mocked them. On the 1000th anniversary of the silence, the new council of races gathered, small, humble, and wary. Their meeting held not in the grand marble halls of old, but in a quiet moon station orbiting a dead star. They no longer ruled, they advised, they remembered, and at the end of the meeting, as was tradition, they turned their eyes toward the dark space beyond the soul boundary, where the Terran lights could never be seen. Each representative stood and bowed their head in silence, honoring the unseen watchers who had once humbled the galaxy. The Chancellor, a frail being of silver light, spoke the ancient words that had become ritual. May we never forget the day the humans taught us the power of quiet, and for a long while, none dared to move until the lights of the chamber flickered, once, twice, and a faint blue shimmer appeared on the main screen. A signal old and simple, but unmistakable. The word displayed was only one. Acknowledged. Gasps filled the chamber. No one had received a human signal in centuries, and for a moment, it was as if time itself stopped. "They're alive," whispered one delegate, his voice trembling with awe. "They never left," said another. But before anyone could respond, the transmission ended, replaced by a soft hum that faded into static. Outside, the stars twinkled faintly, brighter than they had in 1,000 years, as if the universe itself was exhaling. In that moment, every race, every being, felt something indescribable. Not fear, not relief, but understanding. Humanity had not vanished. They had simply been waiting, watching, ensuring that the galaxy remembered. And as the ancient Terran saying was once again spoken in hushed voices across the stars, it carried a new meaning. The silence was never the end. It was the beginning of everything that learned to listen. And so, the story of the silent Earth became legend, passed down through generations not as a tale of terror but as a lesson. That power does not always roar, that the strongest hand can remain unseen, that sometimes the mightiest voice is the one that chooses to say nothing at all. The galaxy continued to turn, stars were born, worlds flourished, and peace endured, fragile yet real, beneath the watchful quiet of a species that had once been underestimated by all and now protected all without. Needing to be seen, for above them, beyond the reach of any telescope or sensor, humanity's fleet still drifted in the dark, their silent engines glowing faintly, guardians of the silence they had created, watchers of the galaxy they had taught to fear and respect the quiet. And though no one spoke their name anymore, every civilization knew in its heart that if the stars ever screamed again, the silence of Earth would return, and it would be final.